All right, so you started the business, you have the entity, we've got a cash flow plan, uh, but where the heck are you putting those savings, right? And how are you actually going to retire? How do we take money from the business and help you retire? So retirement planning is going to help us decide what saving strategy makes the most sense in your business. A few reasons why this is important. You can get a tax deduction for contributions, right? So immediate tax savings this year. You can get tax deferred growth on your investments. They grow without generating more taxes for you. An earlier start equals larger accumulation. Often with most of the accounts, you only pay taxes when withdrawing the funds. So that can be great because probably in retirement, you're at a lower marginal tax bracket than you are right now. Also, if you want Roth style contributions, those are available for tax-free savings. No deduction now, but once the money's in the Roth account, it's completely tax-free for forever. Beyond just the savings, there's a dual purpose of retirement plans, right? So it's not just for retirement savings, it's also a diversification strategy, right? So you're using your business profits to build wealth outside of your business on your personal balance sheet. That's fantastic, right? So as a part of that, we're reducing risk on your personal balance sheet by not having all of your assets tied to the business success, right? And we're creating a separate investment portfolio with different risk characteristics. You own one company here, that's your business, right? It's a stock in a way. And then we're going to diversify across a whole bunch of companies, maybe bigger, and asset classes, right? So that's just part of this whole diversification strategy. It's another benefit of creating a saving strategy for your business. So we're going to go through 4 of the most popular retirement accounts for business owners, then go over some common questions that I get about how to compare and contrast the different options in front of you. One important disclaimer to note: this is not tax, investment, or legal advice. Seek professional counsel on your unique situation. So the first retirement plan we're going to talk about is the Simplified Employee Pension, the SEP plan, right? So some basics about SEP plans. They're simple to establish and maintain. For 2025, contribution limits up to $70,000 or 25% of compensation, whichever is less. And they're great for high income business owners. Advantages: you can establish this as late as tax filing deadline, including extensions, right? So you actually have until the extension deadline. It's super easy. You just file a form 5305 SEP to start that SEP plan. There's no annual filing requirements or anything like that. Contributions are discretionary, so there's no mandatory contributions from that perspective. So they're just really easy and simple. People like that. Some disadvantages: you must cover eligible employees with the same percentage as owner. So I don't see a lot of SEP IRAs when the business has W-2 employees. Usually the SEP IRA is going to be used by a sole owner. It's just when they make the most sense. Other options, other retirement plan options might allow for bigger contributions, and we'll talk about that. With the SEP IRA, there's no borrowing allowed. So if you ever wanted to borrow against the assets in the SEP IRA, you can't do that, right? Not an option. And then one issue that we're going to talk about later too, but SEP IRAs may complicate the backdoor Roth strategy for high earners. So the second retirement plan that I want to talk about are simple IRAs, right? Simple IRA plan. Some basics for the simple IRA. They're for businesses with up to 100 employees. For 2025, employee elective deferrals can be up to $16,500. And then there's a catch-up provision, right? So if you're over the age of 50, you can contribute an additional $3,500 to that plan. And actually, after the age of 60, you can contribute an additional $5,250 to the simple IRA. There is a required employer contribution, and that's typically a 3% match. So not only is there employee deferral, there's the employer contribution on top of that, the employer match. Some advantages to the simple IRA, right? So they're easy to establish and maintain. We love that. That's why they're called the simple IRA. They're super cost effective for small businesses. They also can have higher limits than the SEP for kind of lower income business owners. If there's not a ton of profits to the business, you can still put some more money away on the employee side. They're great for businesses with W-2 employees, so a really good option to consider if you have lots of W-2 staff. And then they're lower administrative costs than 401k plans, which we're going to talk about in a second. Disadvantages, lower contributions than 401ks or solo 401ks. They must be established by October 1st, so there's a deadline. Remember, with like a SEP IRA, it was really like tax filing dates. You have to get that in. No borrowing allowed against the funds in Simple IRA. There's a required employer contribution. So that's important from a cash flow perspective. If you're offering a Simple IRA to your employees and they contribute, you got to make that match. And then once again, the Simple IRA, like the SEP IRA, can complicate backdoor Roth strategies. So let's talk about solo 401ks. This is one of my favorites for small business owners. Some solo 401k basics for business owners with no full-time employees, right? Except your spouse, maybe your spouse. There's two contribution parts to the solo 401k. There's the employee elective deferral, right, on one side, and then there's the employer contribution on the other side. So if you start a solo 401k for your business and yourself, you're making a contribution as an employee, and then you as the business are matching that on top. So they're pretty cool like that. They allow you to put a lot of money away. So for 2025, $23,500 is the employee deferral. And then you can contribute an additional 25% of profits as the employer contribution. So the maximum total for 2025 is $70,000. And then there's a catch-up provision of an additional $7,500 for those ages 50 and over. And then I think there's an additional contribution if you're over 60 or between 60 and 63. So solo 401ks allow for a great deal of savings. You can plow a lot of money in there, and that can lead to a lot of tax savings if you want. That's why we love them. One kind of cool thing about solo 401ks is you can put a mega backdoor option in there, right? So a lot of times what we hear is financial advisors is, how do I get more money in the Roth? How do I get more in the Roth? Solo 401ks are fantastic because you can do what we call a mega backdoor Roth contribution. Sounds big. It is big. So plan documents have to allow for it, and they have to allow for what's called after-tax contributions. But you can contribute beyond the initial employee deferral of $23,500, an after-tax contribution from cash on hand. And then once that's in there, you can roll that over to a Roth IRA, and boom, you've just put a lot of money into a Roth IRA, right? $40,000 plus in some cases. Let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of the solo 401k. So the advantages: highest contribution limits for self-employed. Borrowing is allowed. So you can borrow up to 15% of the account balance or $50,000. One nice thing about solo 401ks is now all of your other existing IRAs or other outside 401ks can be rolled over into this solo 401k plan, which can enable backdoor Roth contributions, which we really like. Backdoor Roths are different than the mega backdoor Roth, right? So there's some differentiation there, but this is a nice little strategy. And then also employee deferrals to the solo 401k don't count towards QBI deduction calculations or qualified business income. There's obviously some disadvantages too. So they're a little more complex to administer versus like a SEP IRA or something like that. If the account in your solo 401k has more than $250,000 in it at year end, you must file Form 5500EZ. It's a big deal if you don't file this form. The penalties are massive. So that's an additional kind of administrative burden. You don't want to miss that. But that doesn't exist with like the SEP IRA. So just something else to note there. So another option to business owners are defined benefit plans. So previously we've been talking about defined contribution plans, right? So there's kind of some guidelines on how you contribute, but then the investment risk, the growth risk is put on the owner of the plan, right? The individual employee or business owner, in this case you. But there's also defined benefit plans, like a cash balance plan or something like that. So these can be a nice add-on strategy. And they're based on a promised future benefit, like a pension amount, rather than an annual contribution. Once again, defined benefit versus defined contribution. So for 2025, you can fund an annual benefit up to $265,000. That's a big number. And there's potential contributions of over $100,000 annually for older owners. And there's kind of actuarial stuff that's going into this. So actuarial calculations are going to determine the required contributions. Advantages: highest possible contribution of any plan type, right? And that's going to lead to tax savings in the year of contribution. They can be especially beneficial for high income owners over the age of 45 plus. And in fact, probably the older you are, the more beneficial these are. And you can combine with other plans for maximum savings. So you could layer a defined benefit plan, like a cash balance plan, on top of, say, a 401k or something like that. Disadvantages: mandatory annual contributions. So you might be required to contribute a massive amount of money in a year where the business profits are slim or something like that. So these are really only for when you have high confidence in your cash flow generation for a series of years. Lots of professional assistance is required because you need actuarial services, you need plan sponsors, all this stuff. So there's an administrative burden that goes along with this. And then also, like I said, there's less flexibility in low income years. So if you have to make a big contribution and the business profits aren't there, it doesn't matter. You got to put that money in. So there's just less flexibility with these types of plans. So I get lots of questions about how do I get more money into Roth IRAs? But most of the business owners I know can't make a Roth IRA contribution because they make too much money, right? So so we look at other strategies to get money in Roth style accounts. Let's talk about backdoor Roth IRAs. And here's some basics. High income earners usually can't contribute directly to a Roth IRA. So we use a backdoor Roth. To accomplish the backdoor Roth IRA, by the way, I wouldn't do this without a tax professional, honestly. But you're going to make a non-deductible traditional IRA contribution, and then you convert that into the Roth IRA. So it's a multi-step IRS-sanctioned process for getting money into your Roth IRA. But it's a really nice tool to have in the toolkit for high earning business owners. Plus, not only can you make the contribution, your spouse can do it as well, right? So if we want to make backdoor Roth IRA contributions for high saving business owner, a high income business owner, here's some pro tips that should go into your plan selection. SEP IRAs and simple IRAs complicate backdoor Roth strategy because of something that's called the pro rata rule. And basically what you need to know is that you just don't want to balance in a traditional IRA or SEP IRA or simple IRA because it's going to make your taxes very, very complicated in the future. And that's where we go to the solo 401k is probably the ideal plan because it keeps retirement accounts separate from the IRAs. Once again, you could roll over other IRAs or 401ks into your solo 401k, which then allows you to contribute a lot of money to that solo 401k, maybe even Roth style contributions if you want. And you can still do the backdoor Roth on top of that. And then there's also the mega backdoor Roth via the solo 401k as well. And so this is the solo 401k with after-tax contributions featured. You convert the after-tax portion to Roth for tax-free growth. And there's potential for a 40K plus additional Roth contribution annually, which is pretty exciting, honestly, for certain individuals or families and business owners. So the takeaway is if you're interested in getting more money in Roth style accounts, the solo 401k becomes a really interesting option for you to consider. So main question number 2 that I receive all the time is, do I start a solo K or do I start a SEP IRA? So let's break this down. So why do business owners often face this choice? Well, both plans are super popular for solo business owners. Both offer tax deferred growth and deductible contributions, so tax savings, right? That's great. But there are different advantages based on business income level, right? So the SEP advantage, way simpler to set up and administer. That's clear, right? You don't have to worry about Form 5500, right? If based on a certain account balance or something like that. So that's nice too. It's just another lowering of the administrative burden and obviously potential penalties too. There's a kind of a risk associated with that. SEP IRA can be established as late as the tax filing deadline. with extensions, and they're a good option if simplicity is the primary concern. With the solo 401k, there's the employee deferral plus the employer match. Businesses of like a certain income range allows that business owner to actually get more money into the solo 401k than they would otherwise with the SEP IRA. So that can be a real advantage there. So here's an example. A business with $40,000 of net profit. For the SEP, the maximum contribution would be $10,000, which is 25% of that profit. But with a solo 401k, that owner would be able to get up to $31,500, which is the $23,500 employee deferral plus an $8,000 employer contribution. So in that case, if we wanted to maximize, let's say, deferred savings or just kind of maximizing retirement contributions, the solo 401k is the clear option on that front. And then there's even a better advantage for those with 50 plus with the catch-up provisions associated with the solo 401k. But earning $40,000 is kind of a low amount. So let's just say, even if you're a higher earning business owner, we still like the 401k better in many cases. The maximum contribution is often the same as a SEP IRA at higher income levels, but there's better backdoor Roth strategies, there's better borrowing options, and there's more investment options with some of the providers. So these are some nice things associated with the solo 401k. For the key takeaway is this: for most solo business owners who are debating SEP versus solo 401k, we tend to lean towards the solo 401k just because of its benefits, its flexibility, despite some of the administrative costs associated with it. So how do you choose the right plan for your business? I would suggest that the decision framework is based on a few factors. One, business entity type. Are you a sole proprietor? Are you an S Corp? Are you a C Corp, right? What kind of business entity did you set up, right? That's going to define or help us decide what retirement plan is the best for you. Your income level and desired contribution amount, that's a factor. Number of employees. Do you have W-2 employees where the business would both be allowing them to make contributions and then potentially even matching some of those contributions or offering a contribution on top of that? How much administrative complexity can you handle? And that comes with both a time cost, a risk cost, and a dollar cost as well. And then what are your future goals and flexibility needs, right? Are we trying to maximize savings here? Are we trying to just, defer some taxes? What's the goal here? And how flexible do you need that to be over the coming years? And then finally, qualified business income deduction consideration. That's a really important one. It's also a really complicated one, and you're just not going to get a good answer on that until you consult with your tax professional. So next steps as you kind of consider this, talk to your tax advisor, right? I strongly urge you to talk to your wealth advisor or financial advisor. And if they haven't talked to you already about this, shame on them, right? This is an important conversation. Think about your goals, all that stuff. How do you set the plan up? Your wealth advisor might be able to do this for you, right? So if you have a financial advisor, they probably could help you set up this plan, or at least have some good ideas on how to set up this plan. Similar with your tax professional. Even better, bonus points if they're working together to try to help you. Honestly, these are just really complicated decisions to make, and then they're complicated to administer. So I always say, work with professionals. Try to put a team together that's going to help you make good decisions, maximize tax savings, or just help you achieve your goals. And obviously, if you don't have a good professional in place, give me a call. I'd love to talk.